we'll have them ready to go. How much are they? Can you look up and find out the price?
Yep, I'll look it up.
And you can go live.
All right, clicking live. Starting live, and we're live.
Hey, we're live. We're big, we're bad, we're back. It is 11:31. Almost made it 11:30. How are you all? Hey, Sound Sweet Studios says, hey kids, just joined Platt. It's my first Feedback Friday. Greetings to all. Wonderful. Greetings to you, my friend. Hey, Ozzy, Blue Way Dave, Christian, Mark, Tom, Doug, Ozzy, Anita, Sheila, Alexi. How are you all? Mark, Todd. Hey, Todd. So this is going to be lots of fun. I'm going to skip the ad so I can see myself all nice and yellow there. Hey, I've got jaundice today. I don't know what the light is that's causing that. Anyway, it is what it is. I hope you're all doing marvellously well, and we have lots to listen to. Lots to listen to. We have Alexi's up first. Look at that, Alexi up with A Long, Long Way Home. I hope you've all had a marvellous week. Let me see who else is on. Magnus. Good evening from Wolverhampton, says Mike. Lee, finally back, able to join again. Hello everyone, Lee. How are you? Anita says she's confused but doing okay. Matthew Watts. Hey Matthew. Okay, great. Mark says he's knackered. Cream crackered. Good morning, Dave. It is still morning, yes. It's funny when you have kids and you get up early. 10:30 seems like the middle of the day, doesn't it? Alexi, Kurt, greetings. All right, I'm going to give it a listen. I actually have a second pair of headphones to try out here. So just to be clear, these are HD 58Xs. How much are they?
Looking it up. 160.
160. So these are open back and they're 160 bucks. So I thought I would try them out. Sennheiser sent us to try out. There's been a very strong rumor I have yet to confirm that Blue are dropping their headphone range for real. I went to Sweetwater the other day and I saw that lots of the models have been discontinued, which is absolutely crazy because every artist that comes in is like, these are so comfortable, they sound amazing. You know, people just were flipping out over them. And Blue got bought, as I'm sure you know, recently-ish by another company. And I think that they're streamlining the range. And it might well be that the Blues are going. And I think that's pretty crazy. If anybody else has heard that, I haven't spoken to anybody over there yet, but I will confirm when I get a chance. So we're going to be looking for new headphones to talk about. And if these open backs sound really good at 160 bucks, which is what we're going to find out, then I will be championing them. But we have to find those headphones. Let me try them on quickly. They're pretty comfortable. It's crazy with open backs though, because you hear yourself talking so much more. Mark said he heard that too. Yeah. Oh, okay, cool. There you go. Yeah, it's a real, I have to agree with you, Dave, a bit of a bummer. Dave says it's a bit of a bummer. Sheila says, that sucks, no Blues. Focal Clear Pros, did you keep yours? I do have them, yeah. They're amazing. I use those for critical listening and for just enjoyment's sake. But it's really important to me to use headphones in situations that everyone can afford and so that we can all talk about it. I don't want to recommend, $1,500 headphones, when I'm doing mixing in the box. I need to be able to mix on affordable headphones. That's why I went for these. Anyway, I've got both sets of headphones set up, so I'm going to have a listen and move between them. But let's start off with Alexi. And Alexi's long, 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 long way home. Not a long way home, but a long, long way home. Let's try it. Let's have a listen.
a suitcase, hurry, a car waits outside. Throw your things in the back, pull off the highway. You say, hey, thanks for the ride. And you're running to gate 21, breathless as you shuffle. You made it in time. Way up high, the world seems even smaller, like painted city lights on the ground. There are things to face when you land, but for now, 10,000 feet in the clouds, the world is a long, long way down. Down, down, down. Reread your messages, so much that you never said. It gets tight in your chest, all of the what ifs. It could drive somebody mad, but you put your headphones back on, losing yourself in a song, wishing you'd spend more time. Way up high, the world seems even smaller, like painted city lights on the ground. There are plans to make when you land, but for now, 10,000 feet in the clouds, the world is a long, long way down. The world is a long, long way, way on the ground. You can't help but feel restless. Up here there's a second to catch your breath. All of the time that you have ain't enough, and every second it feels like half. 10,000 feet in the clouds, the world is a long, long way, way up high. The world seems even smaller, like painted city lights on the ground. There are things to face when you land, but for now, 10,000 feet in the clouds, the world is a long, long way down. The world is a long, long way down. Down, down, down.
Good stuff, Alexi. I'm going to go back and listen a little bit longer on the Sennheisers. It's been very interesting hearing the two. Generally speaking, absolutely wonderful mix. So you use Neutron 3. So Alexis said he used Neutron 3. Obviously, he was saying that in the comments he was using the 5 tips. So what were you using the Neutron 3 on? That would be really interesting to know. I think it's interesting going between the two headphones because when I was listening on the blues, I felt like the vocal was a little bit lispy, just a little tiny bit lispy. And then I put on the Sennheisers, which seem to be super hyped in those kind of high mids.
You'd spend more time way up high. The world seems even smaller, like painted city lights on the ground. There are plans to make when you land, but for now.
So it's interesting, these Sennheisers, the open backs, give you a little bit more detail on the high mids. These obviously have a huge low-end kind of boom to it. But I will say, even between both headphones sound, the mix sounds pretty even on both. The differences I'm hearing between headphones and on the mixes is very subtle. They do sound different, but how can I explain this better? The headphones sound different, but they don't change the balances that much. They just seem to, this one seems to have an extended low end compared with that, which is not really surprising seeing as they're clamped to your head and they're closed. That doesn't surprise me at all. But with the open backs, obviously there's more room to breathe and there's more space, but both I could mix on. I'm going to stick with these for a bit because I'm enjoying them, and also I want to live with them for a little bit and see if we can talk about recommending it. Now, in general, all I'm hearing is like, if you go to words like city,
You'd spend more time.
and you just spend more time, it's just a tiny, tiny bit of wispiness there.
You'd spend more time. Way up high, the world seems even smaller. Like painted city lights on the ground. Down, down, down. Reread your messages. Hurry, a car waits outside. Throw your things in the back.
It feels like with the acoustic, there almost feels like there's an expander on it or something. I don't know what's causing that.
It's outside. Throw your
You hear that? It's not so much a volume thing. I mean, obviously turning it up would solve the problem somewhat, but it feels like there's some kind of expansion going on, like it's grabbing it and then not grabbing it. I don't know what your chain is.
outside. Throw your things.
Because it's just it feels like it's just picking like transients and bringing them forward. So I'm not sure what you put on the acoustic. Didn't use any DS, only Neutron 3 presets and played with them. Yeah, it's just there's a little bit of a 7K lift on the vocal. So what happens sometimes is the 7K catches a phrase and goes, and you hear almost like a whistle of the EQ on it.
Outside. Throw your things in the bag. Pull off the highway.
But I'm tempted to suggest on the acoustic, because it's interesting, because it's a very, very compressed acoustic guitar sound. As you know, when we did the breakdown, it got really super compressed on the way in, and it was hit too hard. And it doesn't need any extra compression. And there is a temptation, I think, if I was going to remix it, that I would use an expander to try and exaggerate a little bit more of the dynamics inside of the performance. But it's kind of a catch-22. I would exaggerate it with an expander, but then probably wipe off the top transients with an L1 or an L2. I know that sounds crazy, but I think it would bring a little bit more solidity to it. The other thing is I wouldn't be afraid to go into like 1K and 1.5K on this acoustic and boost it a little bit, just to give it a bit more toughness.
Outside. Throw your
Because you're hearing acoustic every time it does like kind of. In the you're hearing like this high notes jumping out, so it needs some toughness to support it there. So I would go in and experiment about 1K, 1.5, and just boost those a little bit. And then once you've done that, then look at turning up the acoustic. I think it's a sort of a naive assumption that just turning it up is going to solve the problem. I think you need a little bit more of a body to it, and I think that's the 1 to 1.5K, and just bring that up and then tuck up the acoustic. Start by, because obviously if you put like a 3 dB boost in that area, which is I think what you're going to do, is you are effectively turning up the acoustic quite a lot. So I think, yeah, it's a catch-22. It's definitely the way it's recorded, you know, and honestly, we overcompress the acoustic going in. But otherwise, just look, find out at around about the 7K where we've got those little wispy moments on the vocal. I'll show you where I mean.
faded in time. Way up high, the world seems even smaller.
I mean, it's subtle there. That seems even smaller. Those are very, very subtle.
More time. Way up high, the world seems even smaller. Like painted city lights.
There's a little bit of a whistle there.
On the ground. There are plans to make when you land, but for now.
But it's subtle stuff. And we're in the headphone mix stage now. We're in a place now where we can just hear like these little subtle things. So give me a little bit more toughness on that acoustic before you turn it up. Because if you give me about 3 dB between 1 and 1.5, just experiment a little bit around there. It may even be below at about 7. If you think about octaves, like 700, like 1 in the middle and then 1.5, you've got like 1.4, 1.5, you've got the octaves there. And just try like a dB in all of those places, and you know, and that will add us a little bit of toughness to it. And because the other inclination as well is like to put a de-esser on the acoustic so you can turn it up so it doesn't have that ping, 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 ping. You know. All right. Marvelous work, Alexei. I mean, that really is a superb mix. And the stuff we're talking about is details, so it's really fantastic. Okay, next up is Christian Gilliman. And Christian says, and I quote, he goes, "Hello, fellow plappers. Here's my mix of Dream Girl. Ah, I love that song. I wrote that with the band. It was a lot of fun writing it. And I got to play, I think, everything on it. So you have to excuse, did I play drums or not? Maybe Phil played drums. I don't remember. Compare my mix of Warren's SSL console mix, and I found that mine was missing some presence. I'm not sure if I mixed it on the SSL. I might have mixed that on the CADAC. I can't remember. Sorry. Ended up boosting with the Puitec around about 5K. My imagination in this area is emphasized by transformers and helps the mixed sound dimensional. I hope I didn't overdo it. Replaced for snits and giggles the original bass with a Melodyne MIDI through a Trillium bass because I couldn't get the original to sound how I wanted. Works quite okay now. Excellent. Let's give it a listen. Okay, here we go.
She had green eyes and long brown hair, a pretty smile no girl compared. All the boys in town knew her name. I didn't mind when people stared. She was mine, not a single fear that she'd break my heart and walk away. She's a dream girl, but I know I'll never grow up if I never let go. I wonder how it could have been. So, dream girl, if you give me one chance, I could follow through. I never wanted this to end. I heard the news today. She met a boy, I've been replaced. It's times like these that you want 'em back. She don't like the life I live, but what's he got that I couldn't give? I was once the best she ever had. She's a dream girl, but I know I'll never grow up if I never let go. I wonder how it could have been. A dream girl, if you give me one chance, I could follow through. I never wanted this to end. what could have been love.
Pretty darn amazing, my friend. Christian, it's really great work. I feel ultimately just a little back off the samples a little bit on the kick and the snare. It's like the tone is fantastic, or randomize it if you can. It's just like when the drums first come in early, when it's not so bad when it gets really dense. Like here, in the density here.
She's a dream girl, but I know I'll never grow up if I never let go. I wonder.
There, it's good. It's really good there where it's dense, but here.
I heard the news today. She met a boy. She's a dream girl, but I know I'll never grow up if I never let go. I wonder how it could have been.
I think it's things like that snare fill, rather than go da da da. Like, it doesn't feel like it's going left, right, you know. It feels like it's going da da da. Like it's triggering the same sound a little bit too much. So the thing is, you can just randomize it a little bit, just kind of manipulate, like maybe the live snare gets louder, the sample ducks, the sample gets louder, the live snare ducks, alternate it so it feels more like a left-right thing. When it's super dense, it doesn't seem to bother me as much. It just, obviously, the first time you hear it, which is always what I go with, my gut reaction, it just feels sample heavy. But that's really my main. Thing.
That she'd break my heart and walk away. She's a dream girl, but I know I'll never grow up if I never let go. I wonder how it could have been. Dream girl.
I actually like the big toms, and I don't have a problem with them being super loud, but if it's a stylistic thing, I mean, that's the Queen thing, isn't it? Is to have those massive toms. I have no problem with a stylistic choice. When we had Bradley Cook on the other day, he was like wanting the toms to be a feature between vocals. He's like, push them. You remember there was a mix where the toms were pretty normal, and he's like, no, that was a missed opportunity. You should use it to be a filler between the vocals. And we talked about doing tom overdubs and how a lot of bands would do specifically overdub the toms so they could get them above the top of the kit, especially if there was cymbals ringing, because even with a decent amount of room between your tom and your cymbals, you're still going to get some bleed as it goes around. But I think this is pretty fantastic. I don't mind the loud toms. Maybe I think artistically those are the kind of things that make great mixes for me. I don't always want things to be super safe. I think ultimately I want to hear some more hat, just to get the groove going. Have a listen here.
She's a dream girl, but I know I'll never grow up if I never let go. I wonder how it could have been.
There's a tambourine there which is a little I would probably put a lo-fi on it and bring it down so it's more I think that would help. This is really subtle things, but just a little bit more mid-range and a little dirtier in there, I think would work really, really well and help the groove move forward. Because at the moment it's a little kick, snare, kick, snare, kick, snare, and I want to hear the dream girl, again, this is good stuff because we're getting into things that make things groove, and we're talking about the real finer points of mixing as opposed to boost 50K and blah blah blah, which of course would be silly. But you know what I mean, getting past compression and EQ and getting more into what actually makes or breaks mixes. So I don't mind. Loud toms gives me the ability for some excitement, but what I'm missing is a little bit of a groove in there, and I'm a little on the fence with the kick drum. I feel like it's too big, almost lengthwise. There's a part of me that thinks put a transient designer on it and just trim, even if it's slightly, just trim back the sustain just a little bit so it doesn't sound quite so artificial. Just trim it back and that's.
She's a dream girl, but
It's like ooh. If it could be oof, it's boom, 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 rather than boof, boof, boof. Do you hear what I mean? It's just a little too modern. I don't mind it being modern, but just a little bit. So just take the transient designer and just shorten it. I mean, you could use a gate, I suppose, as well, but a transient designer would do great. Just shorten it, and I think it'll be perfect. I'm not talking about a huge amount, but just give it its footprint just a little less, because it feels just a little too dance kicky there. And then bring up hats and bring up the tambourine and make sure take it away from being so high.
She's a dream girl, but
At the moment, it's like, I want it to be, so a little bit more rock and roll. You know, I want to hear a skin on the tambourine, even if there isn't one there. That's what I want it to sound like. Wonderful work, though. All the stuff we're talking about here is very, very detail orientated. And again, it's the headphone mix stage when you're sitting there with the headphones, making notes about subtle things. The general feeling of the mix is absolutely fantastic. All right, great work. Next up is Jimmy. And Jimmy says, this is my take on Jay Clifford's Paralyzed. Very nice. My first thought was to mix everything with a CLA hub on every channel. It ate up my CPU, but I ended up almost no CLA hub, as I guess less is more. I haven't yet used it. Has anybody else used the CLA hub? I'm sort of indifferent after reading reviews, and I'm not sure what to make of it quite yet. I know Waves want me to review it, but you know, as you probably know, I just review things that I want to review. I also want to make sure that I love something and can talk positively about it. You know, I like what White Sea Studio does, and he can, you know, when he hates something, he can trash it. That's just not me. If I don't like something, I'd rather not review it. I don't need to be spreading some sort of negativity. It's not what I'm about. So I don't know how to think about it. I know a few people I know that are professional have said it's more complicated for them than using individual channels where they need it. But I haven't yet tried it, so I have no actual opinion. So has anybody used it yet? Tried it, didn't like it, said Magnus. Not so sure, but I bet Warren could find some uses it does when it should. Yeah, I would. The thing is, I'd probably need a couple of days. I probably need a couple of days to really kind of work on it and see what it's like. Okay, well, let's give it a listen. What's going on in the chat? This is Eric's chat, isn't it?
I think so, yeah.
I'm in Eric's chat here, everybody.
No.
RME, great stuff. I really like RME from the perspective of connectability. If you're going to go for the RME, is it because you need a ton of connectability? That's where I think it will always win, because it has like optical and AES and all that kind of stuff. We kept thinking about it from a perspective, you know, the audience we champion because they're such a great company and they're very supportive of our community and their stuff sounds great. But the RME is really good from a perspective of connectability. So if you really need a lot of different ways, yeah, I'm not Eric. Hi, I'm not Eric. You know, if you need a lot of connectability, lots of different ways to integrate, I should say, with your studio, I think the RME wins. All right, here's Jimmy's mix. Not using the CLA hub, much mix. That's what it's called.
Watching all the yesterdays glow, I can hear your voice like the loom of an organ's footwork pedaling. I cover my mouth with a curse and a cross to paralyze. you trust me? I'm listening. Don't you trust me? Time changes time into a spineless curve. Turned on a dime, away from the world's preserve. Lost in my mind is a shallow reserve. But you got a lot of love. The feeling I get from closing my eyes is like throwing my hands in the air. But I can fill up my mouth with curses and lies. I don't think that my friends would care. I can feel my face going hot like a film strip melting. I gotta wait, like cover my eyes like a moth to the lights that paralyze. Yeah. Are you wondering or falling out? Are you wondering? Time changes time into a spineless curve. Turn on a dime, away from the world's preserve. Lost in my mind is a shallow reserve. But you got a lot of love. Time changes time into a spineless curve. Turn on a dime, away from the world's preserve. Lost in my mind is a shadow reserve. But you got a lot. Time changes time into a spineless curve. Turn on a dime, away from the world's preserve. Lost in my mind is a shallow reserve. But you got a lot of love.
Jimmy, I mean, absolutely superb work. I think everybody's echoing the same thing. I do like the clattering kind of like aggressive bass tone. I love that a lot. But I am missing, of course, the flanging effect that we had on it that was sort of making it feel a little bit more indie and curish. However, I do like the tone. It could do with the MV2 to, you know, bring the lows and the highs up so there's notes that are not disappearing. So I'd bring the flanger back up. Excuse me. Bring the effect back up. Use the MV2 for the low level stuff and the high level stuff, but also get to about 60 and do a nice gentle high pass on it. And then I think that the kick needs to come up once you've done all of that, you'll probably have to bring down the bass like a dB to dB and a half. dB and a half, kick drum up, lows on the kick drum a little bit more, and then see where you're at. I mean, that's pretty minor stuff for a mix that's pretty superb. Your electric guitar sound was perfect, and the string entrance was just exactly what it's supposed to be. I think there's a tendency, and I think we're talking about this like with the discussion about the toms being too loud, or, you know, we have to remember that music needs to be exciting. And I like the toms being loud in the last song because, it, you know, as Bradley was talking about, like, and Steven Tyler would say to me, you know, something that should be loud should be, what was he said? When it needs to be loud, make it loud, or something like that. Basically, there was like a line that I had with Tom Hamilton, and I pushed it 2 dB up, and he's like, turn it up. And I just remember thinking, that's far too loud. And then the record comes out, and you hear this amazing bass line, and you're like, Steven Tyler was right. And I think there's a tendency when we're mixers to get so technical about stuff that we forget that music is supposed to be exciting. And some of the stuff we love, like we were talking about Raw Power the other day with Bradley, it's like those guitars are just so obnoxious and loud, but that's why we love the recording. It's the obnoxious, loud, exciting part. So I do love everything you did. When those strings came in, Sue bleeding perb. They just came in like, like, oh, over the top, and it made my hair stand on end. I was just like, that's superb. But yes, as often happens, we need to figure out the low end. So a bit more low lows on the kick, shave a bit of low lows off the bass, bring me back that flanger so it's a little bit more indie, and then put the MV2 on it and bring it down. Start with a dB, might have to go down a dB and a half. But hopefully once you get rid of the low lows and you bring back some of the effect and you even it out, it's probably going to feel almost perfect. Great work, Jimmy. Really, really great work. Very creative. Okay, next up is Stephen Korst. And Stephen says, oh, Stephen put a link up. What's going on in the chat? We should test the new headphones on Eric's hair. That's the ultimate benchmark test. Yep. Oh, and we've got a. Oh, look at this. Is that Eric? Actually, if you saw Eric's car, yeah, we should have a photo of your car. Yeah. So Eric has a bright, screaming blue, electric blue Mitsubishi. It's like. It's not blue, it's like, how can I describe it? I don't think there is a blue in this room as bright as the blue of his car. It's close to this blue. But maybe even like, but metallic. So it's like a metallic version of this blue, and it has a fin on the back. And it's really funny because I always tease him, because I always say, you do know you need to be doing about 175 miles an hour for that fin to work. And then we were having, which is true, and then we were having a meeting with Lewitt, and their marketing manager is a really great guy and very, very, very German. He's not Austrian, he's German, and he's very blunt, and he comes out and he goes, nice car. You do know the fin on the back doesn't work until you do 175 miles an hour. Like verbatim said exactly what I said to him.
First thing he says right when we get out of the car.
Right, first thing he says when he sees his car. It's like, so people are either saying it to him or they're thinking it. All right, here we go. Stephen Korst.
Landed here with the world 2 steps away, sizing up the line I've crossed 100 times, taking count of all the nights considered lost, holding tight to who we were before I knew of all the dirt. And stay with me, don't leave, I need you now. And when I do what's right, I know I'll make you proud. Instead of pacing back and forth and giving in when you want more.
Because we just got caught in a little subplot. Okay, so back to Stephen Course. Stay.
Landed here with the world 2 steps away, sizing up the line I've crossed 100 times, taking count of all the nights considered lost, holding tight to who we were before I knew of all the dirt. And stay with me, don't leave, I need you now. And when I do what's right, I know I'll make you proud. Instead of pacing back and forth and giving in when you want more. So it's a shame now that I can't follow. Stay and wait for me, stay and wait for me. I will call when I'm coming. Stay and wait for me, I'll find you here if the stars allow it. It's even worse when I'm close and deny it. I shouldn't ask when I know you want me now. You want me now. I landed here with the world 2 steps away, sizing up the lie I've told 100 times. I can hear it in the way you say my name. There isn't any magic cure, I just refuse to leave the dirt. And stay with me, don't leave, I need you now. When I clear my mind, I know without a doubt no one loves me like you do. It's hard to turn from all the proof, so it's a shame now that I can't follow. Stay and wait for me, stay and wait for me. I will call when I'm coming. Stay and wait for me, I'll find you here if the stars allow it. It's even worse when I'm close and deny it. I shouldn't ask when I know you want me now. You want me now. Stay and wait for me, stay and wait for me. I will call when I'm coming. Stay and wait for me, I'll find you here. Stay and wait for me, stay and wait for me. I will call when I'm coming. Stay and wait for me, I'll find you here if the stars allow it. It's even worse when I'm close and deny it. I shouldn't ask when I know you want me now. You want me now.
Cool. So I think we're all having similar discussions. So if we go to this breakdown section here, let's have a listen.
Wait for me, stay and wait for me. I will call in.
So you see what's going on here. There's this like this 300 hertz-ish kind of like boost area there. Maybe a little lower, but it's like 200 to 300 in the vocal. Like there's a lot of it going on there.
Wait for me, stay and wait for me.
Yeah, it's around about this area. So it's as low as 200 to about 250, up to about 3, so maybe 275. So it's between 200 to 300. And it's just very prevalent on the vocal. And I know the thing is with David is he doesn't have a lot of low mids in his voice. But he has a very mid-range. Stay away from me, stay away from me. He's got this sort of, he's part of that age group that grew up on emo when everything was like Blink 182 and like all of those emo bands. He loves them all, and they're all like this, and everybody sings. You know, where a lot of us grew up on like rock and like low lows and high highs and grit in the vocals and the blues. You know, we grew up with the blues in our music. At least I did, and I'm sure many of you did. He didn't. So when he sings, he's very roundabout here. And it's something that we work on consistently, and it's one of the reasons why we actually gravitated and fell in love with that cheap, very, very cheap Lewitt mic, because it had a hyped high end without being too brittle. And for him, it was perfect. It opened up the top of his range. But I understand why Stephen would want to go down there and try and add some low lows back into his vocal. I just think it's a bit too much, and it's sort of rounding off his vocal a little bit too much in that 200 to 300 area. Also, I think it's probably a little bit on the snare as well. The snare doesn't quite have the bite and the mid-range snap that I want.
I landed here with the world, who we were. Pacing back and forth that I can't follow. Stay and wait for me, stay and wait for me. I will call when I'm coming. Stay and wait for me, I'll find you here.
I think in general, you can see in general wherever we listen, there's a sort of a dip in this mid-range, like pure mid-range area, and a little bit. A lot of guys that master will put a bit of glass on it at about 2K. I don't know if that 2K over the whole mix is really going to prove anything here, but just for schnitz and schniggles, let's give it a bit of a glassy kind of thing. So without even listening at first, I'm just going to do it. So I'm going to go to 2K. Just for an experiment. So I'm going to go to 2K and I'm just going to do this. So it's nearly 3 dB.
That I can't follow. Stay and wait for me, stay and wait for me. I will call when I'm coming. Stay and wait for me, I'll find you here if the stars allow it.
So that's what I did was super, super, super unbelievably naive. And I would never suggest that you do that. But if you gave it to a mastering engineer, that's probably the first thing they're going to do is go in there around about 1 and 2K and just kind of bump it a little bit. But you can, I suggest obviously going back to the mix and maybe pulling down some of those low mids where they're a little bit too prevalent and pulling down some of the high highs and adding a little bit more mid-range to everything. See, I like 700 and 850 and 1K and 1.5 and 2 on certain things. On 2K on most things is pretty horrific. You don't want to be boosting 2K everywhere, but but I think in general, I think it's like it's a bit more. It needs a bit more 700 to about 2K in specific instruments to sort of fill it up a little bit, because at the moment it sounds a little hollow. Overall, the whole mix just sounds hollow. But again, subtle things and a great learning experience, for us to talk about. Now, I wonder, and I wish Stephen was on here, I wonder about his room. I wonder if his room is very prevalent in the mid-range. It might be, Stephen, that your room is like quite aggressive in that area, so you're mixing it out a little bit. We had the same thing with Matt Graham, who's on here, is that we were listening to mixes and we were realizing that his room was affecting how he heard things, because to him he was listening back and he goes, no, it sounds even, and then when he played it to me it sounded different. So it could be that his room is a little aggressive in the mids. Because it's not really, if you read the results, it's not like here, like above 2K, you know, we've got like 3 and above is actually quite detailed. So normally, if it's a hearing thing, what I mean is if it's people mixing too loud, that's where it's usually like, you know, 3 to 5K is like, you know, 9 dB too loud. Trust me, I had a mix come back from an incredibly famous rock mixer, and I'm not going to throw them under the bus, and it was almost unlistenable. And the artist was down there, this is like 10 years ago, the artist was down in the room with this big famous rock mixer, and I was like, how loud were you guys listening? And he's like, oh, it was amazing, it was so loud. And I was like, I can tell, because all of the 3 to 5K area was so like painful, because they were just cranking it and cranking it and cranking it, and the louder you get, the more your ears turn down in the sensitive region. And they were boosting it, like more guitar high mids, more vocal high mid, more snare high mid, to a point where it was unbearable. So I don't think that's going on. I don't think Stephen is listening too loud. I think he's doing a great job. His room just might be a little mid-rangey. Might be just, you know what I mean? It might be from about like 500-ish to about 2K-ish. In this area, it might just be a little bit too prevalent, which is why the mix sounds a little hollow. Balance-wise, it's great. As a couple of people were saying, you know, again, a little bit more low-lows on the kick, a little less on the bass, so they're not masking each other. That's a very, very consistent thing that we hear. And I must say, I'm enjoying these headphones, and I'm also enjoying being able to move between 2 headphones. Great. All right. Great work, though, Stephen. And I wish you were here. We could talk a little bit about the room setup. It's a big deal, and we need to do more on it. We need more discussions on it, because that's going to really help people grow here. All right, next up is Matthew Watts. Only Women Bleed. Okay, I'm excited to hear this. Okay, what's going on in the chat? Haha, is this car convertible, or shall we have him ride on the roof with a pair of goggles? Eric, no, it's not convertible. I wonder if Eric's hair is aerodynamic. Oh, definitely. I mean, yeah. Definitely.
It's my own fin.
Yeah. I think it goes with the fin, yeah. I think he sits his head out like this and the fin on the back. And when he's doing 175 miles an hour in his Mitsubishi, which does like 120 down a hill in neutral. Okay, so Matthew says, here's my first feedback submission. Thank you. I really enjoyed getting stuck into this. The whole mix was 100% in the box. Mix bus was Slate, UAD Apex as well, SSLG compressor. Whose version of the SSL? Was it SSLs themselves or Waves version? Probably SSLs if you're saying it like that. Ozone 8. Main groups, all groups loaded with UAD Studer A800. Samples, using some Slate samples on the kick and on the snare, and a tiny weeny smidge on the, I'm trying to read it, sorry, on the toms. Channel strip soft tube console, British and American. Reverb delay, UAD, Slate, Reverb suites. Eosis, vocal rider and bass rider, probably the most automation I've done to date. Try to keep hard to keep the sound, but equally, but filling the ambience of a large venue. Really looking forward to hearing what others think. Looking forward to listening. All right, here we go.
Man's got his woman to take his seat. He's got the power, she's got the need. She spends her life through pleasing up her man. She feeds him dinner or anything she can. She cries alone at night too often. He smokes and drinks and don't come home at all. Only women bleed. 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 Man makes your hair gray. He's your life's mistake. When all you're really looking for is an even break. He lies right at you. You know you hate this game. He slaps you once in a while and you live and love the same.
So interesting mix. I think we're all sort of saying the same thing. Matthew, I think that the I don't know if Matthew's on there. I think the slate drums is just not working. The toms are super loud. So I was talking about like in the other track where the toms came in between the vocals and was super exciting, and I love that. In this instance, I think for the live, you want the dynamics to be natural the way they were performed. And I know it's always going to be difficult when using drum samples, even the ones I supplied. However, I think the ones I supplied make more sense to the mix. I don't think the slate trigger is working here. One of the problems I have with the slate trigger, and the reason why I haven't reviewed it, is I feel like the compression and EQ that's already applied to the samples is too arbitrary. I don't like it. It's one of the reasons why I've decided to make my own drum plug-in, was because I wanted something a little more wrong. I wanted something a little bit more random that could feel like real live drums, as opposed to these like super perfect drums. And whenever I start off with the slate ones, they already kind of go pap, 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 pap. They're too hyped and bright. They're already too compressed. And that's probably really, really good on a beginner level when you don't know how to apply compression and EQ and it's already done for you. But I think in this instance, as we're all sort of feeling, they just sort of feel out of place, like they're either too loud or not loud enough, or too compressed sounding, too thin sometimes, too plap, plap, plap. And I like the SSL plappy snare thing. I just think in this instance, I want to hear a bit more body on the snare. Look, I do know that the snare was kind of a smaller, live snare was smaller sounding and tuned a little higher than probably I would have wanted. So I did add my samples to try and give it some more body. Yeah, it's a tough one. I think if you're going to do the drum sounds, I would go with something a little bit more natural if you don't want to use the ones that I supplied. Yeah, look, I know Slate Trigger sort of changed the world because it was cheap and he marketed it so well and so many kids bought it and it's what launched his company. So God bless him. It was a big deal, but I'm not a huge fan in these situations. Otherwise, I think everything else is pretty spectacular. I love the way the background vocals sound, but most importantly, the lead vocal sounds wonderful. It sounds totally superb. So I think you did an amazing job on the lead vocal. I love the way the crowd comes in. The song feels live. It feels like a band playing. I think it's all about the drums. It's all about fixing those drums. And I know it's not a great live recording, but that was one of the reasons why I wanted to do it. You know, I wanted to give you something that wasn't that well recorded live, you know. Absolutely fantastic work. Other than that, work on those drums, I think, Matthew, and I think you'll be in a great situation. All right, next up is Andreas. Andreas Thiel. Hello, how are you? I found this song very attractive. I think Shania Twain when I hear this song. Well, I'm not unhappy with my mix. I tried to provide a wide, dynamic range, of course, without being considered too wide, perceived as old school, although I might think this to be an improvement of the current understanding of sound. I'm not sure if the positioning instruments in stereo field is that great, especially the additional guitars and mandolins during choruses. The guitar is doubled low and high, which I panned left and right. After listening again, I like it, but I'll experiment one more time to further make up my mind on this. The second point is the lead vocal. Is it too low in volume overall? We'll listen for that. My first critique provided here on my own mix. Your thoughts are welcome. Okay, wonderful. And it's Katie Laurel. Here we go.
Stay there.
I really like this. I really, really like this mix. What's interesting is like we don't have the low lows on the kick. But as somebody was pointing out here, sorry, I want to give you a name check because you got me thinking, and that's why I love what we do here, is when this really great constructive thing. Mark Peacock said, her voice has a McVie tone. I agree. And I think it immediately made me think this is more of a Fleetwood Mac kind of mix. And so the kick has like more of that 70s kind of not boom, has a The only thing I will say is it occasionally gets a little lost when it gets dense. Like if you listen here. It's nice. Perfect there. There it could have just come up like 3/4 of a dB when the chorus comes in, but in the verse here it's like perfect. It's just feels like Simon Phillips's kick, you know what I mean? Or obviously more importantly Mick Fleetwood's kick. So anyway, when we were flying back from Hawaii a couple of months ago, as we were going in and out of immigration, it was like, hey Mick. Pretty amazing. You can't miss him. He looks healthier than when I saw him last a few years ago. He still is an absolute giant of a man. Super tall and skinny, looks really super healthy. So maybe living in Hawaii is good for him. It up just a nat. Otherwise, this is a pretty superb mix. It's interesting because you were asking about guitar balances and panning. I love them. This is a really, really good mix. I want to have one more listen on my old favorites, just because I'm so used to them. Same thing. There's more low lows on the blues, and it feels fantastic in the verse, and then it just disappears slightly in the choruses. And I'm not talking about coming up a lot. I think this is just automation city. Just get in here and do some automation stuff. But really, really good mix, Andres. I think that you captured, you know, even the title of the song, "Thanks for Loving Me," sounds like a Fleetwood Mac song. Just really good, really good. All right, we're going back. Sheila, hey. With a song from London Lorhan, who I think you probably know was she was a finalist on, what was she on? I think it was it America's Got Talent, or was it just recently, or was it American Idol? She got through to Hollywood, and she was American Idol. Yeah, she was on American Idol, which is pretty fantastic. Okay, so Sheila says, second mix, guys and girls. Thanks for the support. Be well, Sheila. Very succinct, Sheila. I like that about you. Here we go.
Now you must have this twisted around, mixed up in the tiny brain of yours. this is just for now, and she'll be crying when I'm not around. Oh, not anymore. I'm locking up my heart tight, waiting for someone to treat it right. Oh, you said love was tough, but you brought me down day after day. So love, but no, not anymore. I'm locking up my heart tight, waiting for someone to treat it right. Oh, you said love was tough, but you brought me down day after day. So love is enough.
Pretty fantastic. Sheila, I love your work, and I love just how incredibly helpful you are in the Academy, and how you're always on the chat answering people's questions and being so positive. And we had an amazing Skype chat where we talked about music and pretty much loved all the same artists. So, little less bottom snare, make it a little bit more top snarey. I think that the bottom snare is great, but when it comes in, it's a little too abrasive here.
Oh, not anymore.
I think overheads in general, bring up the overheads. I need a bit more width going on, so don't be afraid to bring up the overheads. The kick, when it's in the chorus, is fine that it has the clickiness to it, but here, when it's on its own,
Now you must have this twisted.
it's a bit too like, you know, oh, it should be more like thump, 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 pump, 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 pump. You know, that's kind of what I would work on.
But for your games, and yeah, you played me. But now, not anymore. I'm locking up my heart tight, waiting for someone to treat it right. And oh, you said love.
I don't think it's less snare, Dave. I just think it's a bit more top snare, a little less bottom snare. I think that's really all it is to me. And the other thing is just maybe one more set of compression on the vocal, just to smooth it in just a little bit. It gets a little, there's a little bit too much dynamics in it. Maybe that put a tape, you know, compressor across it. A tape across it, just to kind of like compress it a little bit more. I don't know what access to stuff you have. I don't know if you have the Mac DSP stuff. If you do, analog channel I think would be great. I personally still, we were talking about this with Bradley the other day, still reach for the analog channel before I reach for a Waves or a Slate or any of those tape ones. There's still something that Colin did right the first time around 20 years ago. He just nailed it. He got it right. And you'd be amazed just how many guys and girls mix using analog channel. So I think that might be the solution on the vocal. Otherwise, I need more overheads. All I'm really hearing is kick and snare. Less thump, more thump on the kick. So just bring down the clickiness on it. So it's like boom, boom, boom in the verses. And then, of course, in the breakdown. In general, it feels really, really good. I think a small room around the piano would help a lot. Fantastic work. And once again, Sheila, thank you for being such an incredible member of our community. All right, because you superbly rock. Okay, Nikhil is next. Nikhil says, or Nikhil, hopefully I can pronounce it right. Cool track, loving the guitar solo in the middle. The challenging part on this one for me was the vocals. They just seemed to be a bit harsh at some points. The instrumental was really fun to mix. Hope you're doing more of these soon. Let me know what you guys think. Keeping it together. Gotta keep it together. Okay. Rock and roll.
It all started when my cousin got to old summer. Long legs and hair like strawberry fields.
fantastic mix. What I love about the mix is that he has a direction and he's gone with it and he understands it and he doesn't waver. So I think the vocals could do with a tiny bit more compression on them, just a little bit, just to bring them forward a little bit. They come and go, come and go. I do like that they're low as an artistic statement because it sounds more like a rock record like that. You know, that was typically what people love. When I'm working with the classic rock guys, whether it be Jack Douglas as a producer or Shelley Yakus as a producer or obviously Steven Tyler as a singer and Ace Frehley as a singer and guitar player, they always want me to duck the vocals a lot less than you would expect. They want them in the track because they grew up listening to the Stones and Zeppelin and stuff, and the vocals were in the song, and that sounds more exciting. So I think Nickel, as a rock guy, understands that. However, I think there's a little bit more of a balance. I don't think it's necessarily turning it up as much as it is compressing it a little harder, because then some of those inflections will come forward a little bit. I'm not talking about squashing the schnizzle out of it, but if you got 2 or 3 dB more of compression on it and kept the volume the same, I think the vocal would sit a little bit nicer to me. When I say I want a bit of effects on the vocals, I'm not talking about swamping it with long plates. I'm just like a little bit of a room around it. A short room would be fantastic. Somebody suggested, I want to name check them, maybe a bit of saturation on the vocals. I think that might help as well. That might round out some of the edges and bring it forward. Mark Peacock. Whoa, Mark, 2 for 2. Says, nice, Stroke Speaks Kings of Leon. I kind of dig the dry vocal, maybe some space for some kind of distortion saturation. Mark, good ears. I agree. A little tiny bit of that. But I do agree, it's very, very stylistic. Nickel has made a choice, he's stuck with it, and it sounds really good for it. However, I think, again, a little bit of room on the snare would not hurt. And maybe 10% less bottom snare and 10% more top snare. Otherwise, really fantastic, great vision, great execution of an idea. Makes perfect sense to me. All right. Next up is Paul Motion. Paul Motion, I must say thank you ever so much, Paul Motion, for your wonderful comment. Paul is a great proponent of the Academy. I love it when I go to YouTube and I answer questions and members of the Academy get in there and talk up the Academy and stuff, and Paul did that. Thank you ever so much. I do read all the comments. I try to answer as many as possible. I love it when you get back onto YouTube and are supportive of everything we do. You know, it's really, really wonderful. And Dave Merkel says, that way he doesn't have to go as fast for the rear fin to be effective. What, because of the haircut? Take gel and do a spoiler to it. Yep, definitely aerodynamic. Oh, that's me saying that. All right. So Paul says, hi folks, added some more detailed notes shortly. Magnus has set the bar pretty high, but wanted to get this up to where people see what they think. Ian wanted to spare a few minutes. Thank you, Jason King, for the live chat crew for early feedback. Start to do a bit of a Spandau Ballet on the track. On Whiskey. That should be interesting. Started out trying to do some Spandau Ballet, but fuse was wrangling new direction. Kit wasn't really working out, so did some serious damage to it. Kept it as an intro to introduce the song. Added a few bars intro, cutting in some sax, guitar, Nord, and a few effects for good measure. Nice. Kick sub went through Mac DSP 4030 Retro Comp. REQ4. High pass at 49. 160 into an MV2. Waves, Poetec, snare, sub only as a Mac DSP. Lot of detail here. 70, 17K, 2K, 1.6, 350. Hat and heads are going through Mac DSP filter bank, Mac DSP 4030 for the overheads. So on the Valhalla Vintage Verb, Toms have a BF76, Puig Tech, R-Comp, MV2 and L2 on a parallel kit, some grunt and rawness. Bass DI's REQ4, high and low passing, great. Dip with fairly wide at 350, going into Decapitator and R-Comp. Bass sub going through Waves Puig Tech, split the GTR tracks and solo and lead parts. Both the guitar, lead vocal, API 550A, solo guitar 550As. Both have EQ and MJC UC Junior. I haven't used the Junior because I do like the additional features on the $27 version. But I know the Junior is free, so that obviously is a big deal. Mac DSP E60 on filter banks across the Hammond and Hammond 2. Wonderful. Some really good stuff. I want to hear this. A lot of instances of Mac DSP, so that definitely fits in with our conversation that we've been having thus far. And thank you, Paul, for being a great supporter and for those great comments that you left. Let's get stuck in.
Soon as your whiskey touched my lips, you set a fire to my song, and I'm gonna take it down to heaven. We push and pull and won't let go. It's a never-ending merry come and go now once more. And know you're so insatiable, so take me down again. Moaning, screaming, don't pretend. Wanna hear my name, with gritted teeth and a heavy breath. Just lose yourself with me and you, and tell me what you wanna do, and we'll dance along the satin till the morning. Heaven knows you're what I need, and I can only hope that what you see is you and me, and never letting go. I'm gonna tear you down so hard, you're gonna be calling out for God, and he's gonna let you know he's looking down, and just keep going. So take me down again. Moaning, screaming, don't pretend. Wanna hear my name, with gritted teeth and that heavy breath. Just lose yourself with me and you, and tell me what you wanna do, and we'll dance along the satin till the morning. Jonesing harder now, so take me down again. Moaning, screaming, don't pretend. Wanna hear my name, through gritted teeth and a heavy breath. Whoa, lose yourself with me and you, and tell me what you wanna do, and we'll dance. We'll dance. Wanna hear my name.
Such a superb mix. I think Sheila's, suggesting a little bit more verb on the snare, and I think that could happen. I like it, but at the same time, I agree. These are stylistic choices. I think the only thing I would do with the snare is just ride it. I went back to that section here.
So take
just bring it down like half a dB, maybe a dB.
So take me down again, moaning, screaming, don't pretend. When I hear my name, the gritted teeth and a heavy breath. Whoa, lose yourself with me and you.
Because so what happens here, you see when the band comes in full, it doesn't feel like the drummer's picking up. It just feels like he's playing kind of regardless.
So take me down again, moaning, screaming, don't pretend. When I hear my name, the gritted teeth and a heavy breath. Whoa, lose yourself with me and you.
Now he feels like he's being a little, the drummer's being a little drowned out there. So I think, I don't mind the drums on the snare on the verge of just being buried ever so slightly there, but it needs the juxtaposition, the dynamic change, because at the moment it feels like the snare's the same volume. So these are minor things. Paul, what an absolutely superb mix. And I think to Sheila's point, the other thing you could do is bring down the snare in those quieter sections like a dB, and then just add a little extra reverb when it gets dense. Otherwise, I think we're in perfect situation. Really wonderful. Wow, Paul. Speechless. I mean, that's the one we've given the least amount of notes to in a long time. Just really fantastic mix. Okay. Last but no means least is Ozzy. Ozzy says, this is my side of the story of this beautiful road song. I used only acoustic and some electric guitars from a session, no bass guitar. I recorded some live percussion, cajon, udupots, djembe, stomps, claps, and a shaker. I want to create two different worlds, one in which is a dreamland over the clouds, and the other is a long way down, a dark, dystopic world. Ooh! I want to create a tension which at one moment he might face the land where dystopia from his dreamland. Wow! Those are lofty goals. Lofty goals. And apparently Mark says you have a fin for show, hair for go. There you go, Eric. Fin for show, hair for go. Here we go, Ozzy.
In a suitcase, hurry, a car waits outside. Throw your things in the back, pull off the highway. You say, hey, thanks for the ride, and you're running to gate 21. Breathless as you shuffle on, you made it in time. Up high, the world seems even smaller, like painted city lights on the ground. There are things to face when you land, but for now, 10,000 feet in the clouds, the world is a long way down. Down. Reread your messages, so much that you never said. It gets tight in your chest, all of the what ifs. It could drive somebody mad, but you put your headphones back on, losing yourself in a song, wishing you'd spend more time. Way up high, the world seems even smaller, like painted city lights on the ground. There are plans to make when you land, but for now, 10,000 feet in the clouds, the world is a long way down. The world is a long way. You can't help but feel restless Up here there's a second to catch your breath. All of the time that you have ain't enough, and every second it feels like half. 10,000 feet in the clouds. The world is a long, long way, way up high. The world seems even smaller, like painted city lights on the ground. There are things to face when you land, but for now, 10,000 feet in the clouds. The world is a long, long way down. The world is a long, long way down. Down, down, down.
Wow, Ozzy is absolutely fantastic. It's really, really good. I'm a big fan. I love the cinematic feel. Like I said, it reminds me of kind of a Trevor Hall thing, you know, especially here.
1,000 feet in the clouds. The world is a long, long way down. The world is a long, long time. Way up high, the world seems even smaller, like painted city lights on the ground. There.
So you are using the bass, but you're using the lead bass. Down, 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 down.
Way up high, the world seems even smaller, like painted city lights on the ground. There are plans to make when you land, but for now, 10,000 feet in the clouds. The world is a long, long way down. The world is a long, long way, way on.
Now, the only thing I can say is, like, it was interesting listening on these Sennheisers, which have quite high detail on the high end. Let's go to the blues.
10,000 feet in the clouds.
That some of the percussion stuff comes across as like little pops. There's like, and I'm sure it's the percussion, but if you hear here,
10,000 feet in the clouds.
I'm sure it's just the percussion itself that's doing it, but so what's happening is it's sounding a little bit like a digital pop, and it's happening quite a lot. It's pretty evident on the blues, but very evident on here. And I think that that's one of the things with this sort of percussion stuff. I noticed when I was working with Trevor Hall, we had loads of percussion that we were doing. And when I started to like boost like high mids to get it to always cut, I'd get like these little transients that go pap, 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 pap. And in a denser situation, it ended up sounding like little digital pops. So what I would do is I would try and identify those areas and then put a de-esser so that it didn't just spike at like 3 to 5K and go pap, 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 because that's where my ears are most sensitive. So it might be worth going back on there and finding those areas where it's spiking, and then put a de-esser across, you know, the whole percussion track, and you'll find it will just tuck in just a little bit.
In the clouds. In the clouds.
And it's very, very subtle, but on headphones, and especially headphones that have got a little bit of a hype on the high end there, you really do hear it, and it's a little distracting because it's just like little things. Honestly, that's the only thing. And if that was all it was, I've heard many, many, you know, professional mixes on the radio that have those kind of things. But that's literally it. Otherwise, it's absolutely superb. I love what you've done. I mean, you have, I'm not sure if it's dystopian for me necessarily, but it's definitely world music. That's what it makes me think of. If you listen to the stuff I did with Trevor, I did 2 albums and an EP with him, both of which are huge. His first album We had one song at like 28 million plays. You know, and what was great about it is like this was his world. He had program stuff. He would do live. We'd bring in live guys and other stuff he had done, and it's a great balance and really beautiful. And you have brought that back to the song. You've taken a song which was not like that and made it feel like that. So, bravo! My hat's off to you. As always, Ozzy, you do wonderful work. Thank you everybody for being so unbelievably supportive of each other. Have a marvellous time recording and mixing. We'll be big, bad and back next week. We have to go and meet a potential intern now. We have 15 minutes to get there. Wow. Talk about timing. All right. Have a marvellous weekend, and I'll see you all again next week. We'll be putting up part 2 of the Pro Tools course for those of you who are interested in learning Pro Tools or already know it from Michael Stucker. That will go up next Wednesday, won't it, Eric?
Yes.
With his dynamic haircut and his blue metallic car. We'll have to post a picture. We need to post a picture. I'll take a picture and we'll post it. We're going to drive down in his car now. Woo! See you lovely guys and girls next week. Have a marvellous time recording and mixing.